Now.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's live stream. As we get this started, I'm going to go ahead and finish the marketing as people join in, and then we'll get started. And today, if you saw the advertising for it, we are going to be working on the nose. So if you have any questions at all about the nose in particular, whether it be drawing it at a specific angle or what colors would I choose to shade the nose, this is the live stream to ask it. And also if you have questions that don't pertain to what I'm working on.
Like, how was your weekend?
Yeah. Let me make sure all these links work. We don't want to end up with what happened one time.
We just get like 5 users in here.
Right, and then we had to kick people out. Okay, it seems like they're working. All right, you ready, Joe?
I am ready.
Hi. Welcome everyone to today's CG Cookie live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and that's minus 5 GMT. And I know that we're still in a daylight savings adjustment here, so if you're outside of the U.S., it might be an hour earlier for you, and I think that'll go for one more week, and then it'll be back on track. I want to thank all of you guys for coming, and today we're going to be working on the nose, and I'm joined by Joe Chico, who will be the moderator.
Hello.
And while people are joining in, really quick, before we get started, I wanted to showcase what we got this weekend. We had a bunch of people at my house because we had a convention on Sunday that we all went to. And while we were there was this booth that does these action figures. They're called A3. And I got this guy while I was there. And I am sort of in love with A3 and all their products. So every time I see them at a convention, I always feel obligated to buy one. And this one I've been calling Major Tom, and he's pretty sweet. I haven't found the batteries to make them light up yet, but these are the kind of toys where not only do I want to buy them, but I want to draw them. So don't be surprised if within the month you see a drawing of this guy on my page. And then also Adam, who was the con director, he bought me this one, which is like one of the originals that the guy himself painted. He comes with like this machete with magnetic hands, which I thought was a really neat idea for action figures. And it still kind of smells like spray paint because the day he finished this one the day before of the con, so that was cool. And then also, half price books at a sale over the weekend, and you'll never know what you can find. I found another Brahm book. Brahm is one of those artists that have always inspired me for his illustrative work. It's a bittersweet relationship because some of his work I'm not as compelled with, and then others I'm like totally infatuated with some of his drawings. They're very, very much like illustrative and bold use of color with subtle highlights. So stop by your local half-price bookstore if you have one similar to where you are located. I would check it out, and you'll never know what kind of treasures you might find. Okay, I'm ready to start drawing noses. And as always, if you have any questions, even if it doesn't relate to drawing noses or a facial feature in general, feel free to ask it, and we will do our best to answer them. And what was the last thing I wanted to talk about? I think that was it. Oh, and if you haven't checked it out already, we published the Getting Started series yesterday on Concept Cookie, and it's for those who are completely new to digital art. So if you have questions about like setting up your tablet or software or knowing the shortcuts to resize your brush quickly, it kind of goes over the very basics of what I believe every digital artist should know just starting out of the gate. So right now I'm also planning to record tutorials for after that, so stay tuned for that. All right, now we can get started. I'm going to share my screen here. And as we always start these, feel free to say not only hello, but where you are from. It's really cool seeing where our watchers are in the world.
My screen just froze on your face.
Oh, oh God.
You were just like, ew.
Noses are one of those facial features that seem more tough than they actually are. And when I hear people that struggle with noses, I think they might be overcomplicating it, where noses themselves can be broken down into a really easy way to remember. And I also created this little help sheet a few years ago on breaking down the nose into simple shapes, because once you start seeing the nose as shapes, it's easy to simplify it. And once you're able to simplify it, it's easy to recreate it. So I'm going to put this on the side as well. All right, so first things first, how do I go about drawing noses? When I draw noses, for some odd reason, I usually start with the nostril. Turn my shape dynamics off on this. No, I'll keep it off. So I usually line it up. And while I'm doing this, I'm imagining that giant circle that makes up the center part of the nose, and I think about the nostrils that line up next to it. Now, if you can do this, that's literally half the work, because then from here, it's giving them an edge. Now, I'm giving you the most simplified version of how I draw noses, because, like I said, I think once you're able to simplify it, you can build upon it, but if you don't have a solid structure to begin with, it's going to just look overcomplicated, and then you'll try to make up for it by over rendering or over shading, over shadowing it, and that could be a problem. So rather, I want you guys to see how the nose can be broken down very simply and then add your own touch to it. Something like that. And don't forget the bridge of the nose, because the nose isn't just the bottom part that makes up the nostrils and, I don't know the technical terms for the bulbous part of the nose, but the circular parts, because you also need to incorporate the bridge of the nose, because that makes up a big percentage of what the overall nose will look like. Something like this. Now, from a side view, I actually enjoy drawing noses more from the side view, I think, just because they can have a nice silhouette to them. Where from the front, it's very round and soft. And admittedly, I tend to make the features that I create more soft and more easy, not as angular. So like all the nose I even did in my practice run, you can tell are generally pretty smooth and small, where I tried to push myself in some of them to make them angular and a little more unique, but for the most part I tend to go with the same nose. And that's okay, because I think once you find comfort that you draw all your facial features in, it's okay to replicate that as long as you're adding some kind of new addition to it, like putting it at a different angle or using a different color and try to shade in there. But the actual fundamentals, if you can have a structure that you are satisfied with and you really like, then I would then focus on other things to even push your facial features further. So from the side, it's just usually something like this, but I don't always just go on the first try. Like right here, it bothers me that the bridge is too slanted and that this is too indented. So don't feel bad if you don't get it perfect the first quick sketch that you do your nose in. Even this, I kind of want to make smaller here. I remember my art teacher in high school talking about how you'll end up drawing facial features similar to the way that they appear on your face because of how often you see yourself, and when you look in the mirror, you might not even do it consciously, but you're analyzing and you're really looking at how the different shapes and forms line up to each other. And I have a very small, I used to make fun of myself for having a little pig nose because it's not only small, but it's faced up in the front. It's not pointed down. And it's very close to my eyes in the sense where, you know how some people have longer noses? I consider my bridge of my nose very short. So usually when I draw my characters, I tend to notice that more than I used to, just because my friends have been picking on me a little bit for drawing myself all the time, and I do see it now. I very much agree and recognize that I am drawing my nose on characters that I draw. So I try to be aware enough where I push it in different directions. Like in this live stream, I'll show you examples of different noses, and I'll really force myself to draw outside of my autopilot zone, where I'll like purposely make the nose longer or sharper, or I don't know, something where it would be a little different. I don't know why I'm working on the eye here. And then from a 3/4 view, this is the one that usually throws people off. You see, yeah, I'll do it a little overhead as well. So it's really about understanding the shape that the nose makes. And I would just practice this. Look at a lot of different reference photos of people at a 3/4 pose, and trust me, it's not hard at all. Like you can find it on Pinterest or even Google image search. Pretty easy if you just type in like go nose 3/4 or some kind of a 3/4 profile view, and you'll find a bunch of them. So you have to imagine the nose that it juts off of the face itself. So if we thought about the head as different shapes, so from a side view, if like this was your eye level, oops, here, you have to remember that the nose isn't flat on the face. It's going to jut out on this shape alone. So it's not sunken in. So when you see it from a 3/4 view, that's why it's so tricky, because you're still trying to give the impression that the nose is jutting off of the face without it looking like monstrous or like it's jutting too far out of the face. So that's when you see either people going too far out or not far enough and it looks more sunken in. Like the worst thing you could do is try to fit it in the face when it really should be off. I think one of the hardest things for me was pushing the nose outside of the cheek and jawline and being okay with it and knowing that that's how it really does work in real life, and it just is a weird angle. So I would definitely use reference and repeat that until you become comfortable with it. I was watching a live stream or little tidbits of a live stream yesterday, and one of the artists said something that really resonated with me is you have 10,000 crappy drawings in your mind. And to get them out before you start doing good things, you just have to work fast and you have to do a lot of them. So that's why sometimes when you do like 10 or 15 drawings and they take you forever, you still might feel like it's not that great. Well, that's because you're still trying to get rid of the 10,000 bad ones before you start doing good ones. It was a really cool thing because I thought about it myself and I was like, yeah, every year I probably draw between 200 and 400 things. Especially when I was younger, it was like 4 or 5 things a day. And they were bad considerably. And I think the sooner you get those 10,000 out, the better you'll be in the long run. It was one of those things where I really liked how he was talking about not trying to achieve success quickly, where you have to think of it as a long game. It's not a sprint, it's a mile, it's a multi-marathon mile, maybe even like a triathlon run. All right, so now Joe, do we have any questions I can hit up while I get into this?
Oh, of course. I just saw this really awesome pun. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. It says, "Who knows what the subject for today is?"
I'm assuming we're gonna get a lot of that.
That's a good
Oh, you know
one.
what? While you're doing the hellos or whatever, I'll do just a quick value study on the nose. So I'll draw while you're saying some of this.
Okay, I'll just do the shoutouts right now.
All right.
Blake says, "Hey guys, cheer from ATX." Do you know where
Where's
ATX?
ATX?
I don't know.
Oh.
Does it mean Texas? Oh, Austin, Texas, maybe?
Oh, that could be.
Jake Scott is from Texas as well. He says hello. Welcome back, Jake. We have Ankat from Sweden. First time on the stream. Hello, welcome.
Hello, welcome.
Micah is back, saying hello, Tim. Ringo-chan94 says hello, guys.
Just like line them up, shoot them at me.
All right. Hobie Cope says hi from Michigan. Whoa. Oh, I guess they speak Dutch as well.
That's awesome.
Ashley says hello from Tennessee. Ringo-chan is actually from Brazil. Says hello. Kate QVQ says hi there, dear Tim. You have amazing hair today? Question mark.
Question mark? Oh, that's awesome. Yes, question mark indeed. I need a
Tomas
haircut.
says hello from Slovakia.
Hello.
Um, greetings from Moscow, says Morningstar.
Hmm.
Beatrice DT says hello from Belgium.
Oh.
Dalen also says hello. Oh wow, we have actually more than one person from Belgium. Jonathan Miller says hello from Southern Indiana. First live stream they've been able to catch this month.
Awesome.
Uh, Andy says hello from Poland. Love these streams, you guys rock. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, Matthias says hello from Belgium.
Hello.
Kitty Lizzie says hey from New York. New York.
I think we got a pretty even amount from states and outside today.
Blake says, "Oh noes, you didn't just make that pun."
We might be getting a few of those today. I can smell it.
Um, Minnesota represent. Oh, is this Ashley? It is Ashley. Hello, Ashley.
Hey, Ashley. Actually, really quick, while we're talking about Ashley, this is something that I wanted to address to everyone about selling fan art at cons, and it's something that I've been thinking heavily about lately. And without getting too much into it, because I know we want to talk about noses, just I want each of you to do research on if you're going to be selling art at conventions or selling art in general. Just make sure you do your research and really figure out what you want to be known for and what you want to be branded as. And I think if you do your research first, then it becomes more apparent what kind of an artist you want to be known for and what you're trying to do when you're selling fan art. Because I think, well, we'll save it for another stream, but it's something to think about for you guys is definitely do your research and really figure out what you want to be known for. I'm done. Thank you, Ashley. I'm glad you're here today.
Martin Field says, "Hey Tim, do you have any plans to visit the UK at all?"
Next year, yeah, I plan to go to Europe next year. I'm not sure where yet, so I mean, if there's a convention out there that's like the really well known, that's probably the one I would want to hit up. So if you let me know, that's probably where I will be.
Man, I feel like there's everyone's from every state today. Nick Starr is from Massachusetts. He says hello.
Hello.
Uh, Bob says hello from Georgia, USA.
I love Georgia.
Hans Krill says hi from the Netherlands.
Hello.
Here's an actual question with a hello. It says, "Hello from Michigan. I was wondering, what do both you and Joe do to get over a creative/art block?"
So I know we usually talk about this on usually every other stream, but usually for when I feel like I'm hitting a slump or a point where I feel I'm just not good or not satisfied with what I'm drawing on, usually those last a day. So if I've actually tested this where the next day then I usually am fine. So I've never had an art slump last more than a day if it's like a serious I can't draw today. But if it's one of those if it's a mental thing where you're critiquing and you're evaluating your work and you feel like you're either not hitting the level that you should be at or you're seeing the mistakes but not being able to fix them, I think that can be more frustrating, and those do prevent you from creating work, but only if you let it. So my best advice is if, like right now, I'm trying to finish my red piece, and there's a lot of environment stuff that I have to tackle in it to finish it. So it's like I can see the end reward, but to get it, I have to like jump over hurdles that I've never jumped over before. So rather than being intimidated and just like stop at the hurdle, I'm going to go do my research, go to YouTube, look at different references or different environment artists, how they do it. And this can apply to anything. So whatever hurdle that might be for you, do your research. It's going to take some time and effort outside of drawing, but trust me, it's so worth it once you do it. And then Joe, how do you do it?
Uh, I think I talked about last time I talked about the fire theory, right? With like
Say the
passion.
theory again.
So the idea is that it's kind of like a campfire, and that if you're coming into a art block or creative block, if you're doing art too much, which it sounds kind of silly because you would think that you could never do it too much. Um, like if you're doing too much of a workload and you just hit this wall, um, it's like putting a giant log on a fire, and it usually just puts the fire out. Whereas if you do tiny things, things that inspire you, things that like studies or things that motivate you, tiny ones that'll it'll help start the fire up and build that fire. Um, I would say the biggest thing is uh, figure out why you feel like you've hit this creative art block, and then try to fix it. I know that sounds kind of weird, but don't try to overdo things as well. That sounds. Does that sound right?
Maybe. I think what you mean though is like don't kill yourself. Like if you're killing yourself and it's not going anywhere, you're not getting better. It's probably because you're trying to force something that you don't know the knowledge to do. At least that's the way I see it. Where it's like, no, take your break and like find the knowledge that you need to apply to your work to finish it, rather than it when really you're not making any progress. If anything, you might be doing what I call over rendering, and that's a whole other problem that you have to figure out.
Yeah, and you articulated it way better than I did. It's like the idea of breathing when doing anything. You should always breathe so your
Yeah,
timing is correct.
exactly.
D Brown says, "Hey guys, keep up the awesome work, and Chico, keep it crazy as usual." I keep it crazy?
Apparently.
All right.
Actually, if is this Dennis Brown?
I think
I want to
so.
give a shout out to you. I'm pretty sure this is who is asking the question. A big shout out. I want to thank you for all the work that you've been putting into the fan page on the Facebook page. I see like updates all the time, and you're really managing that community that seems to be forming on there. So, yeah, quick shout out to you. Thanks again, Bud, for doing that.
Oh, someone is currently, or no, it says, "Greetings from the great nation of McDonald's. I'm on their national Wi-Fi. Any tip suggestions of noses or introducing the nose, pre-rendered stage? I mean, like the contrast lines, etc."
Yeah, sure. Admittedly, I have worked at a McDonald's before. When I was on a road trip, I needed internet, so I stopped at McDonald's. So that's kind of funny. Um, okay, so any tips on suggestion of nose in like contrast lines? Yes. Okay, so I think what you're talking about, let me make a new layer here. Alright, so when I do the nose and I think of it purely in contrast, you can think of it as a shape. I think of it as like a fat necktie, like this. And, oops, so if you think about it, here's where the eye would be. It would be on this side and this side. But when you're thinking of contrast, there's going to be more shadow underneath of the nose and then usually on either side of the nose. Now, remember, this is more pillow shading. So it's like a neutral lit thing, and it's not nearly as this contrasted. But just for, it's kind of like on the example over here, where the sides will have a slightly darker shade of value, and the underneath of it will have the darkest shade. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll be black, but just for the perception of form and value, that's kind of the value we're trying to hit, or the values that we're trying to hit on the nose. So I'll give one right here, and then the sides will be slightly lighter than the bottom. And then this, I'll make the same. All right, so these are, well, it got really windy outside. These are the basic values. So now when we start blending it out, you might start to see the nose come alive. So now I'm just purely imagining the different shapes that I associate with the nose, but I'm, for the most part, using my eyedropper tool to pick up the value that is surrounding it, and I'm blending it out. noses usually aren't that angular. There's a roundness to them, but you can play with different angles depending on the nose. I have seen sharper nose before, but I think I just generally stick to a softer nose shape and form. And depending if you want that bottom line to be seen or not. Then I'll grab a darker value to just line out the nostril itself. Now, I rarely go about it doing this way. This is more for a demonstration. I usually do it the way that I've been doing this nose up here. And I'll get more into that one after I finish this one out. Now, the one problem I definitely think I see the most with noses is over highlighting the nose, where I see bridges being really, or I see very light values being thrown on the nose when they really shouldn't be, unless if it's very specific. And sometimes using celebrity photos aren't the best for reference because paparazzi and the lights, the flash bulbs that they use are so intense and bright that the highlights are usually overblown almost. So I don't want to see a nose that has like highlight here all the way down the bridge and then highlight all on the face. Sometimes that's like an inaccurate representation because that's very unnatural lighting that you're getting and you're placing on these forms. So what I would do is focus more on subtle highlights. Usually there's one on the bulbous part of the nose, and even that could be blended a bit more. And then the specular highlight, the very intense one, is usually seen in that subtle highlight there, something like that. And then the bridge in the nose, rather than it going all the way down, sometimes it gathers more on like the top or sometimes more right in the middle. It kind of depends on if they have a bump in their nose or the shaping of the nose specifically, but I try to keep it definitely more subtle up here. It's darker for the brow, typically. And it's sometimes hard explaining facial features in a sense of there won't be one way to do it specifically because everyone has a slightly different facial structure, but I'm giving you a general look at how to draw them, and then hopefully you'll be able to apply that to whatever facial features that you're trying to draw on your character. Or if it's a study, too.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you just mentioned the highlight of the nose, because that's something that I just started learning in like the values of the nose, and with my master studies that I've been doing, where it's the reds that they use are not high in value at all.
Right?
Yeah. But like it looks brighter because the red, you know?
Yeah, it's all about that visual contrast.
Same with eyes. You know, everyone thinks that eyes are just super blown out,
Like
but
the white
in,
part of the eye is not actually white.
yeah, but in reality it's like super low, you know.
Hmm. There we go. I'm trying to think. I guess, are there any specific questions on drawing the nose? And maybe I'll hit those before I start adding color and what I would do for that.
Yes, actually. Love Jinx says, "What are your tips on making a nose more masculine or more feminine?"
Ah, okay. Yeah. Let me go ahead and move these noses out of the way. So mind you, I'm going to give you generals. I'm not going to give you specifics because there are some guys that have more feminine noses and there's some girls that have more masculine noses. But as a general kind of knowledge thing, girls tend to have softer, smaller noses. You're trying to think more delicate, more pretty. Let me go ahead and draw blue without shading. I'll just do quick little ones. And then for guys, you can almost think of it being more rough, more bulbous, more angular, more structured. So this is something I would consider a girl nature. Let me go ahead and do a guy nose on the side. try to make it tend to have a wider base. Sometimes make the nostrils a bit longer. And then really rough out the form on it. So I'm showing how just a subtle difference can really push it. And then if you wanted to exaggerate it, then definitely go for like on a side view and definitely like push out that nose form. I mean, you don't have to purposely make it ugly, but I would say generally guy noses are associated with more rough, and sometimes I like using that, but for the most part I tend to stick with a nose that could be considered almost unisex, I guess. Oh, this is like a witch nose. I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. Like that. So this would be considered a little stronger because of the slope, and it's not as rounded at the end. Where if you round it out, that's typically what tends to give it a softer appearance, where if you really let it be strong like this, it gives more of an appearance of a masculine male, or a masculine nose. And then obviously the area around the nose definitely affects as well. So like the bridge is very important. And like even in here, you can see how this nose is a little more soft and chunky. It's a little, I don't want to say chubby, but it's definitely softer. Where if I slimmed it down and I pushed the angles on it, it definitely gives more of an appearance of masculine. Now, like I said, noses are a little tough because everyone has different noses, and you definitely see guys with softer noses and girls with more rigid, hard noses. So I think out of anything, you'll let the other facial features do the talking for you, because I definitely think lips are a big one to define between the two, and eyes. So I would almost let the nose be more neutral. That's more of a personal opinion, and let the eyes and the lips do the separating between masculine and feminine forms. Okay, I really want to shade that nose.
Here's going to be a quick question. It says, "Hey Tim and Joe, I find that I snack pretty heavily when I'm painting, and it usually turns out great. Do you have any must-haves while working on commission work or personal work? Hi from Chicago, Rachel."
Hi, Rachel from Chicago. Uh, this is something else that I get a lot of crap for, is I carrots. I actually ate 2 this morning, and I feel like I always have a carrot near me, and that's probably my go-to. And I have to have at least something chocolate per day. I don't care what it is. I just need some chocolate.
I think it's more weird because you don't shave the carrot.
I don't shave the carrot.
You just pull the carrot from what looks like it was from the ground out, and then you eat it.
I don't know if any of you guys buy those pound bags at the grocery store. They're not baby carrots. They're like legit carrots. And I don't know if it's just because I'm from Wisconsin, because me and my best friend in high school used to do that, where we would just eat carrots, and we never thought of it. And then recently I was told that's the weirdest thing, that you don't shave it. And it never even occurred to me that people shave the carrot before they eat it. And almonds. I would say almonds are my other big thing.
And you gotta have your smoothie, right?
Oh yes, NutriBullet. I'm sure all of you love kale and spinach and all that great stuff. Oh, you know what? I should make a color palette for the colors I'm throwing on this.
I was gonna say, what do I usually have? I always have a cup of water. I gotta be constantly drinking water.
Yep.
Music. Music helps a lot. Or just background noise in general.
Yep.
And a sketchbook. I always have to have a sketchbook next to me, so that way I can get my switching from traditional to digital easier. You know?
All good.
Oh, here's a good question. Do you have any tips on drawing noses if the head 3/4 turned and is tilted a bit up or down? My nose always appears too flat at those angles.
Yeah. Now let me switch gears. All right, so when you're drawing the nose from below, usually the lips will get a bit in the way, but let me go a little lower. All right, so if you're drawing it from below, the worst thing that you could do is try to like flatten the nose out. Like you really push the nose out. The nose doesn't change its form if the angle that you're viewing it is from underneath. So you shouldn't change the way you would draw it. Actually, this is almost like overhead too. So like right now, this could be eyelash 1, eyelash 2. So like this would be the head from an overview, and the nose would be like jutting out. But this was actually intended to be below view. Maybe I'll copy this one really quick. So this might sound weird, but maybe even take a photo of yourself where you're doing it completely from underneath and above, and you'll see how the nose juts out. Or even in the mirror. I don't know if you've ever had to look at yourself at this particular angle, but really seeing how the nostrils look at that angle and like the spacing in between each nostril and the spacing between the nostril and the edge of the nose itself. It's like weird things like that that you wouldn't think you would need, but you would be surprised when you might use that information. Like that. Mouth would be there too. And from above, you wouldn't see the nostrils, obviously, and you would just see, what is that called? The foreshortening view of the nose? Is that the right term?
For looking down at something?
Or just when you're at this extreme angle. I know there's a name for it. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Foreshortening is when something is in front of another object and covers distance.
I think yeah. Because I think it would only be foreshortening if I like drew the body and like his feet were super tiny.
I think this is just a bird's eye view.
Not even. Oh, I guess maybe. This is a very weird camera angle to be at. I'm also drawing this like I'm trying to draw it orthospectively, or oh my god, I can't even say it. It's
Orthographically?
not ortho, yeah. Where I'm not trying to put it in perspective so much as just draw it as is, which probably you wouldn't get from this angle, but I'm thinking more in a 3D sense at this point. But regardless, this is like the extreme angles to see the nose from underneath and above. So the biggest tip I have is just make sure you jut it out off the face. Like don't be afraid to push it out because that's how the nose is. And then you might see how the different features like the brow and the eyelashes. I don't want to try drawing eyelashes right now with this brush, this angle. But you definitely see how some forms you can see from different angles and some are more hidden because of the way the face is structured.
Hashtag art selfie.
Yeah.
This one just got upvoted super fast.
Let's hear it.
Nick Starr says, some digital artists such as Feng Zhu recommend that pen pressure/transfer should be turned off most of the time to replicate traditional paintings and prevent value muddiness. What do you think about it?
Pen pressure and transfer should be turned off. Oh, I totally agree with that. There's even times where I question how long something takes me, and it's because I have transfer turned on. Because I'm relying on that to be like my scapegoat for blending. Now, I don't know if I would say it's like horrible to do because it doesn't automatically mean your stuff is going to become muddy. I will agree, though, it does make it easier because when you work at different opacities, when you cross over, you are adding so many different values than if you had maybe one or two values to work with. You're really easily able to see the true value of what you're working on, where when you're doing this all the time, you have to blend so much to get a consistency throughout that makes sense and it's very clear to read. So I definitely agree with it, but I think you should still practice both ways because it is one of those things that you do slowly learn, okay, I have to push down harder at some times, but then there's other times where I can let the brush be not as hardly pushed on the tablet, and it creates this look to it. So it's all about experimenting, but I do agree with that, and I honestly do keep my shade dynamics turned off at all times, and there are many times where I almost just want to work with my transfer turned off as well. So I agree with it, but it's one of those things where test it out for yourself. Don't feel like there's one rule to rule them all, essentially, and work with that.
Yeah, I think another huge thing is understanding color. Because if you start seeing that your stuff's turning muddy, then if you understand color or you're getting a basic understanding of it, you'll start to realize like, okay, I'm obviously choosing the wrong color here, and it's making it more brown or more dark or more light. Whereas I feel like if you really start to grasp color and light, then you'll understand that even if you were color picking from a study, you would be able to see like, okay, this is obviously too dark and it's making it muddy. So I need to pick a color that's going to boost it up just a little bit.
Yeah, because if it's looking muddy, chances are you don't have enough visual contrast in it. Where even this nose could get really muddy if I did contrast. So like on the edge of this nose here, on this nostril, I'm going to add this lighter skin color against this slightly darker value. And this contrast right there gives the impression that this part of the nose is jutting off of the face. I'll do it on this side as well. Now, sometimes you don't have to make it like extreme. You can blend it in a bit. But if it's looking muddy, that means that there's very little visual contrast. And that could be with color, with value, or saturation.
Dylan Ever says, I have a strange problem where I can draw all the facial features because so many people are making tutorials just for the separate features, but I have a really tough time actually putting the features together and making it look good. Any tips?
Yes. Okay. I think you're right, and I thought about that the other day too. Where when you're thinking about the face, it's good to have knowledge on each of them, but your placement of them will actually be almost more important because you could be awesome at rendering each of them individually, but if you don't know how to put it on a face, that information is almost rendered useless until you're able to know your proportions and how to line them up. All right, so if this was my basic head, and we all know the basics of eyeline is in the middle from the top to the bottom. The face can be separated into three regions: the forehead, the nose, the mouth. You'll find your own pattern that you follow. I usually, for whatever reason, I start here, and this is the eyebrow slash beginning of the bridge of the nose lines, and that's where you usually start. Then the nose, you'll usually fall to about that first line. And just remember that these are equal sections. Oops. Now, also remember that this is a very straight-on photo study, or not photo study, just drawing in general. So everything's going to line up perfectly, or it should line up pretty perfectly because I'm forcing it to line up perfectly. When you're drawing at a slight angle, you have to think about it in a slightly different manner. So the mouth will fall about halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin. Now this you could even make a little wider if you want. Like I said, I tend to draw my forms more soft, admittedly usually more feminine. So sometimes if I'm doing a male, I'll specifically push the jawline out or like emphasize the chin itself, get a bit larger. Having that strong jawline often gives more of a sense of masculinity.
Yeah, give him one of those Joe Chico chins.
And way down here.
The Crimson Chin.
This is another example where I think I do draw myself because I have like a lack of a chin. So that's why my characters tend to have very soft chin lines. And the eye will fall under the eyebrow line itself. And the one thing that I think I was told that helps out is the eye size. You can think of it as 5 eyes going across the head. And there should be a general amount of space in between the 2 eyes to fit another eyeball. And like I said, the more of these little snippet tips and tricks to draw the head that you know and you have at your disposal. You know what? Maybe I'll make this bigger so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. I didn't even think about that. The easier it'll be for when you're drawing it at different angles, because then you'll be able to pull from a variety of these tips and techniques to give you the head and the proportions that you're looking for. So the biggest thing I think I learned in college is the top half of the head usually only contains the forehead and hair. Literally no other facial feature tends to be up there. Everything that happens will be below the halfway point, if you want to call it that. Actually, that nose is way too big. And then the ears usually fall between the nose, that second section as well. And it usually is from the eyebrow line to the bottom of the nose. And then usually heads aren't this bulbous at the top, so then I usually go back and thin them out like that. Ching. So that's typically how I think about when I'm drawing the head and how they fit together. And if you really then want to push it further, your little nuances of like, I usually add these lines right here, shade them out, because this connects the eye and the nose on the face. These little patches of areas around the skin, where like having a pocket under the skin, having the cheek bone represented in some way, and then the smile lines hinted at. Because what you might be doing is just like plopping the facial features on a blank head and then not doing anything on the head itself. You got to remember, even though there's pretty much blank space in between like the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the forehead, whatever, there's still a lot of value and underlying forms that you need to at least subtly hint at. And those subtleties will add dimension to your head in the long run and give it that form and shape that I think you're looking for. So like even adding a shadow underneath areas or cast shadows, stuff like that will really help. And that's how I draw my head. Yeah, I'll keep coloring this.
All right, next question is from Ivan. It's how often do you go out to draw from life? What do you prefer to study from there? Sculpture, sketching, people, animals?
I would say I've been doing it more recently, but people definitely. While I was at the convention over the weekend, I was drawing passerby people that were looking down or were passing my booth and trying to capture their likeness as fast as I could, because that's definitely a skill I don't associate myself with, is like drawing super quick and capturing like the expression or the gesture that they're doing at that time. Always have a sketchbook on you. You might be surprised when like you're out and about and you really want to draw something. I think when I'm walking somewhere, and it might be something as strangely random as going to Subway, and you might see someone, or there might be a dog walking, something weird that will inspire you. I always, if I actually made a tutorial on this on Concept Cookie about how you can get inspired from the most random, and you want to pull from that. You don't want to just throw it up as like a weird coincidence and be like, oh, that was really inspiring, but that's not particularly what I'm working on. You want to use that inspiration and work with it. So somehow work it into what you're working on, or do a whole new study just based on that, because you'll be surprised what you might learn from something that you didn't know inspired you.
Something I noticed the other day when I was out at Walgreens was there is a lot of interesting people in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They're just interestingly shaped people.
Totally agree. And George Webb's is always a beautiful spot for drawing people. I feel like it's a haven for the older crowd, and those tend to have the best facial structures. They're usually really interesting, and those are the ones I tend to like drawing more in form of a study. Where admittedly, when I'm doing like my own characters or something, the noses tend to be more streamlined, more similar to each other.
Actually, you know what's a really good idea? Going to like a comic convention or an anime convention and just drawing the people that are cosplaying because they're literally doing like a bunch of action poses and stuff. Like that's such an opportune time to draw those people.
Yeah. Really quick, the nostrils of the nose themselves, I usually only give the darkest value where it's going inside of the nose. So it's actually looking kind of like I'm picking the nose right now, but the area just under this black line will be receiving more light than the actual black part. And you got to imagine that the forms are being pushed inside of the nose. So it's not going to just be completely flat black depending on your light source because sometimes it does appear like it is just flat black, but do your best to not do that and really have it shade up into the nose. And sometimes it's easier to think of facial structures if you don't see them as flesh and bone and muscle. Think of it as like clay or Play-Doh, and you're literally pushing your fingers into the clay itself. Take them out and then study how the light interacts and affects the clay that you just did. And you'll see it's not just two black holes. There's definitely light that's being able to be captured on the edge compared to the I don't want to say the nostril end, but the area where it separates the top part and the inside of the curve here.
This is a really good question as well. Do you like your own art?
I only laugh because I think I don't know if it could just be me, but with every new piece that I create, I usually start to like it about 60% of the way through. Sometimes 30 if I feel like I had a good laydown of foundation colors, but usually about 60% is when I start to really like it. And then around the 90 to 95%, I get more into the anxious feeling of just wanting to get it done. And by the time I finish and I put it online, usually the next day I'm already dissatisfied with it. And I want to make it better that next day. Not specifically that piece, but the new piece that I will be working on. So in a weird way, it motivates me. I mean, I definitely don't want to say I don't like my art. I do like my art. But I think if I settled for just keep being like, yeah, it's good, yeah, that I would never actually grow as an artist. And I think I'm more critical on myself, and I almost want to say a lot of the top digital artists that I've done interviews with or just talked to in person at Spectrum, they're very harsh on their own work, and I think that's what pushes them to create work that is better because they're not satisfied with it themselves. So yes, I like my art, but yes, I also feel that every new piece that I do has to be better than the last one I just did. I think if you really, really don't like your own art, then you might be going down either a style that's not yours or you feel dissatisfied with the level of quality that you're hitting. So I don't want to be like, yeah, you have to dislike your art to become a good artist, but I do think you need to push yourself and be very self-aware of the art that you're creating and really look at it and see what do I like about this, what can be improved on. That kind of a that way it's more structured when you're looking at it.
Hobie Cope says, how can you draw the smile lines and the wrinkles by the eyes without making the person look old or tired?
Yes. Let me see. Who can I think of really quick? This is a tough question. It kind of depends on eyes themselves too. Let me see if I can find one really quick. It's easier sometimes to show what I'm talking about rather than say it. Of course, there's a One Direction picture that comes up. All right, but this actually is a perfect example. All right, so on this guy, you can tell that he's younger, but if you really look at his eye structure, he has a really deep set pocket underneath, and he has these wrinkle lines. I think they're called crow's feet, or at least that's what my mom calls them, on the side of his face. And these typically are used for older people or people that have skin that's more subtle. So then if we take it away, yeah, you're taking away some of what would consider them old, but you're also taking away some of the personality and what makes him uniquely him. So I think if you add them, the way to not make it look tired or old is you got to keep, and this is going to sound strange, but you got to keep those wrinkles tighter. They can't be as, I don't want to say sappy. They can't be saggy, I want to say, where, like, let's say I added, it was like this and it was really pulled back, and I had another one, and this was really leaning over. He had maybe 2 wrinkles under the eye. That's where it can start to look old. But if you keep it consistent and tight, that's when you might get those face wrinkles that still give the appearance of youth, but still give them a sense of uniqueness with the wrinkles. It is tough. Admittedly, that's one of the toughest things to do is add wrinkles or smile lines on a face without them making them look old. Admittedly, drawing a character that is like smiling really big, adding those wrinkles right there, those smile lines, without making them look super old is tough. So the best thing you can do is use reference and do a lot of studies of people smiling. And not only people, do them of like teenagers or even kids just smiling, because they have wrinkles, especially even little kids, like 5-year-olds. When they smile, they over-exaggerate their smiles a lot because they don't know how to smile yet. And their face, they're just full of wrinkles, but they're not like elderly wrinkles. They're just how skin's folding on itself. And it's natural, but it looks strange. So trust me, it's really tough, but just practice those and you'll be fine. Okay, I'm thinking of what I want to do now. Oh, maybe I'll do different types of nose. Or is there another question that is more specific on drawing something?
This is kind of a general one. It's hi from Ukraine. Is Loomis' approach a better way to learn how to draw heads? Any advice on learning how to draw heads without guidelines?
I'm assuming he's talking about the straight on 3/4 side view with the shapes. 'Cause I typically use the Loomis approach.
Oh, do you?
At least if, hold on, you know what? Let me double check this so I'm not just assuming things. I'm actually.
It's so bizarre because I feel like now I'm starting to see other artists that are just using other people's approaches. So, but it's like newer artists, you know?
Well, isn't Loomis an older artist?
Yes, but
Okay.
at the same time, there's also, George Bridgman and the way that he does his too, So it's like, they're all different, but at the same time, now new artists that are becoming big are becoming known for their heads, but it's kind of the same thing as the old ones.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, it looks like the Loomis approach is the way that I do it, where it's the cylinder, or the create a sphere. Oops. Create a sphere. Then, ooh, that was a horrible circle. Create a sphere, line down the center, line extends past, creates the jaw. Then this gets separated into 3. Or at least from what I just saw from Google image search. Yes, this is the Loomis approach. And yes, this is the one that I used. It's actually the one that I was taught in college. I'm surprised I must have like subconsciously picked that up and used it for my own stuff because I don't remember being taught specifically this, but now it kind of makes sense. And yeah, there are definitely other ways to approach the head. Uh, this is the one that I use and I recommend. I feel like it's the easiest, but if you find one that works better for you, then use that one. Don't feel like you have to use a specific one because you're being told to.
And do you have any advice on drawing faces without guidelines?
Yes, and all right, let me zoom in here. When drawing face without the guidelines, usually I do these in side profiles because I'm so comfortable doing that. But if I was not to use a guideline right now, I would do what I was talking about before, where I would draw the areas that I'm most comfortable with that kind of give a structure to the face, and then work off of that. So I work minimally, and I have each of the lines that I'm drawing out here represent something that gives an impression of the forms that I'm creating. Well, it is sometimes a little tougher. Digital art, you can kind of get away with it because you can undo and all that other stuff. Traditionally, though, I definitely take my time in getting the head looking right because I can't use my liquify filter. I have to rely purely on how I lay things out.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh,
what I usually do with size, I block things in.
yep,
You know,
that was my
like
next thing I was going to say.
yeah, it's looking at shapes.
So when you go at it blindly, this is something I almost don't recommend doing either. It's so much easier to just get a subtle guideline that you can just erase or take off the layer after. The other way that I would do it, something like that, and then I would just work around trying to figure out where the features go. But the other way that I would do it is doing the jawline first, and then adding everything else inside. Now, like I said, I actually would never recommend going in it blind because I think this can actually hurt you, where it's so much easier to see the mistakes or the proportions if you block things out first, even if it's a quick minute or two sketch. And like when I even doing this, I want to like do really big circles and I want to let my line be more loose and fluid because when you're so rigid and structured, your piece can end up looking rigid and structured because that's how you treated it the entire time. If I was more loose, like right now, I'm working very fast in like a circular motion, but I'm able to create a head structure so much faster than doing it blind like I was.
But you've also studied it using like guidelines and stuff a lot,
True.
you know.
And the other thing is, in the back of my mind, I'm seeing it on the screen without having to draw it. Now, it won't always come out 100%. That's why I just used the selecting tool and then moved it over. But while I'm drawing, in my head, I can see the circle. I can see the guidelines that I talked about, the Andrew Loomis ones. And I'm trying to work and function those in. And then at the end, all these excess lines that I don't want seen at all, I just erase. But I think too many artists focus on getting it perfect from the get-go and having the entire process look perfect. That's definitely not the way I would recommend doing it, where I want you to feel comfortable and confident with the shapes that you're laying out and really get a sound structure going before trying to do the detailing and everything. Let it be a little sloppy and messy at the beginning. I mean, definitely don't just go like crazy without any thought or purpose behind it. Put thought or purpose behind it, but still work fast, and you'll be so much more satisfied with the results. Okay, so I think I'm going to do some different kinds of noses, and I'm telling you now, regardless of what you may think about this, it's not racist. And I think only if you see it like that is when it becomes a problem, because that's not my intention of what I'm about to do.
Somebody wants you to draw Lana's nose too, by the way.
Yeah, actually, I'll do hers first. She has, I'll say, an edited nose. But if you know me, I love Lana, so I'm not gonna give her any crap about it. I think she was so pretty to begin with, she didn't need any adjustment. And so that you guys can see it, I'll find a reference really quick to draw. There we go. And this one will be a black and white one. Oh, that is not good quality. Hold on. Let me erase some of this extra. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in and zone this area off. Okay, so now when I'm drawing Lana's nose, I'm gonna start with the foundation color here. And then I'm gonna structure it out first and then go into shading it.
I'll ask you a question while you're doing this.
Yeah.
Uh, Renee says, what do you think is the most important thing in your art that helped you come to where you are?
Most important thing in your art that helps you come to where you are. I would say definitely having a self-drive, I feel like did, but I guess an outside influence that really impacted me was my high school art teacher and writing an email to my parents about how I'm not a real artist and I'm just a photocopy machine. And there was a lot more in the letter, but for the most part, it was kind of calling me out. And it was very true. At that time, I was drawing what I would see, and I wasn't giving any personal input. I mean, yeah, I guess you could. Admittedly, I think I was more of a technical artist in high school because I was able to reproduce what I saw. And looking back, I'm like, how could I even think I was that good? I was my high school art. I do not consider that great at all. But at the time, it really affected me. I was like furious. I was so angry that someone had the audacity, especially someone I considered a mentor and a teacher, to write an email to my parents saying I'm not an artist at all. And over the next week or two, I produced probably the best works I ever produced in my high school career because of her. She pushed me outside of a comfort zone. She hit a nerve with me. And uh, even after watching Whiplash recently, it's really true how sometimes if you want to become better faster, you almost need someone pushing you and only pointing out your flaws and not letting that destroy you, but actually let that make you stronger. And that was one of those really weird learning experiences where I feel like it was at that point I was able to learn how to handle critique because I handled it poorly at first. I definitely was like, don't you ever email, like I painted a new piece and it was like purely out of bitterness and anger. And she was like, oh, I love this new piece you're working on. And I was like, what? Like, it's directed at you. I'm totally like trying to call out you. And she's like, yeah, I know. I love it. You're actually putting yourself into your work. And it was one of those weird eye-opening experiences that I honestly think that is the most important thing in my art that helped me to get to the way I am. So it's not doing watching tutorials. It's not drawing. It's your state of mind on doing drawing itself. That's it.
Charmaine says, hi, glad I could catch the stream. It's 3:30 a.m. in Malaysia. I have a
My God.
question regarding paint over and tracing. Do you consider them as cheating or part of the learning process? Thanks.
Do I consider what is it? Tracing or paint over?
Yeah.
Um, yes, I think you're cheating yourself because you might not actually be learning what like. Even doing a study, like right now, I consider this a study because I am not literally drawing over the face and like turning the layer on and off to see how close I am to it. I'm using my analyzing skills. I'm observing the different shapes, like where the different shadows lie, where the highlights are. Like I can tell on the right side of her nose, so like right here, it's lighter in the image than on my drawing, so I need to adjust that. And uh, I guess that goes over with like tracing too. Are you really learning the forms of the face if you're tracing over it, or are you just literally uh, almost plagiarizing what you have underneath of it and calling it your own, but you're not actually absorbing the knowledge behind it? And that's where I think you're cheating yourself. And yeah, you might get a better result faster because you're drawing over it, but in the long run, you're hurting yourself. So I think there are times if like you're in a studio and you need to do something like really quick, yeah, for time efficiency, I can definitely understand how sometimes you can't always be original or whatever. But when it comes to learning and trying to become a better artist, I definitely think it's more of a hurt than a help.
Here's kind of a weird question.
Oh boy.
It's from the Acid Demon. Says, I sort of have a weird question. Tim, your accent has that neat feature that your voice goes up, like in a question at the end of the sentence. It has some Northern Irish sound to it. Is this a Wisconsin thing or just a personal style? It's awesome.
It's awesome, they said.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
You sound
um,
like Ron Burgundy. Like now you're like asking a question.
am I asking a question or am I stating a declarative statement? Um, actually, I mean, this is kind of off topic, or not, I guess a little bit. I was watching Saturday Night Live, and it was Black Jeopardy, and one of the people, while they were asking or answering the question, you know, how you have to do it in the form of a question. Well, she was stating someone's name, and it was like, imagine if it was like George Washington, and then he was like, no, 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 you got to state it in the form of a question, and then she was like, George Washington, and it's kind of the same thing where I feel like I might do that inherently because that's how I have always talked. But I definitely got called out on it from my boss as well. While he was watching some of my early tutorials, he's like, Tim, do you notice your voice, like you go up on the end of sentences? And it's probably a mixture of it being a Wisconsin thing and I'm Irish. So that's probably where you get that from. But I've never had someone call it awesome before. So thank you.
A-dee-da-dar, da-dee-da-dar. We're off
I'm
to
gonna
be
see this
Lucky
guy go up for
Charms.
everything. For everything?
Betna says, hey Tim, would you consider doing a review on Art Rage 4 or My Paint?
Um, I probably wouldn't just because of the time that I'm spending with the new tutorials soon. Joe might be able to though.
I've never heard of those.
I've heard of Artrage is the one that Pui uses on his I or the
Oh, it's
oh
tablet?
what is that? The tablet, yeah. Samsung tablet.
Huh.
I do know though, like I've used Sketchbook Pro on my phone before. That's what I was using to do like quick little fan art studies, and it's pretty fun. I was actually surprised by how accurate it can be, but just be careful because when you bring it into not a real software, a software on your computer, it might look more blown out or more pixelated than you saw it on your smaller device because it looks great on your small device, but it looks not quite as great on your canvas when you bring it in or when you import it in.
Ashley says, "Bwah ha ha ha. It's true. Midwest love. Say no."
No.
No.
I also know I don't say bag right. I say woof instead of wolf, which is still weird for me. I
That
say
sounded
milk.
so forced. You were like,
Wolf.
wolf.
Yeah, it's a wolf to me. And then milk, not milk.
Say
And
car.
car,
Say fire.
fire. It's anything with like eg. I do really bad at. It's like egg or even um, rag,
Say
not a
alligator.
rag. Alligator.
They say alligator normal.
How do you say it wrong?
Alligator.
Alligator. It's also really interesting talking to Kieran. I don't know if a lot of you know. In America, we say aluminum. In Australia, it's aluminium. So it's really funny how some words even are spelled exactly the same, but even different countries say them completely different.
Or like Boston. It's not a
Well,
car,
Boston.
it's a
um,
car.
Actually, I really like the Boston accent. I'm probably one of those that I don't know. Do most people enjoy the Boston accent? I like the Boston
I
accent.
think so. I think everyone enjoys it.
Okay.
Everyone loves a good dosage of Mark Wahlberg.
Or any film that has Matt Damon or Ben Affleck in it.
Yeah.
So there's Alana nose. I probably could, or you know what? Maybe I'll do more of that. So you can see how her nose is casting a shadow slightly to this side, like right here. It's subtle, but I want to make sure I add it in. And for her, the main thing that I was really trying to get is she has a very straight nose up until it gets into the arch of the eyebrow, and then it curves out. So I wanted to make sure I blended that appropriately to match her nose. I probably should make it a tad sharper at the point. She has a very sharp pointed nose, and even on the underneath of where, like, if this was nostril 1, nostril 2, you sometimes see this in people. I'm not sure if there's a specific term for them, but they have like a ridge in between the bulbous part of their nose. And I probably should add that in on Lana because she definitely has just a subtle one. You're not trying to be like, sometimes when you're doing studies like this, people might get self-conscious if you're drawing someone specific, but I think those little nuances that people might be more insecure about, you should definitely add them because it makes them them. It makes their facial features uniquely them. So like if I didn't add this, or if I made the bridge of her nose more like hollowed in, it wouldn't look like her anymore. And I think that would be, it wouldn't be true to the representation of what I'm trying to recreate here.
Oh man, we got like 5 really good questions that just popped up.
Let me hear 5 of the really good questions that just popped up.
Well, first I'm gonna. This is a declarative statement.
Okay.
Question. It's from Ringo. It says, I connected so much to Whiplash 2. I recommend it to every artist. Really, at the scene when Fletcher and Andrew are talking at the bar, I actually thought I've become my own Fletcher.
Oh, yeah. I honestly do not think Whiplash is about drumming or jazz. It's literally about being an artist or being super passionate about something and wanting to take yourself as far as you possibly can, further than you even think you can go. So yeah, I actually recommend everyone watching that movie. Go watch that movie. And I think that might help you understand critique too, because no one will ever give you as harsh as a critique as that man did to that student in that movie.
Didn't they like get in fights and stuff?
He was throwing chairs at him. He was actually pretending to be nice to the student, trying to get like a backstory out of him, so like find out about his parents, about everything, and then he used that as ammunition to attack him with later. It was so degrading, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then the kid would not give in though, and then he got really good. I won't spoil the movie, but I guess without, and you know what? I don't want to reveal it. Yeah, just go watch the movie.
All right. The next one says about the tracing topic. Uh, Ilya Kushnovo, Crown Prince. We know that artist as Crown Prince.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
was accused of doing things or doing these things in the artwork. And did you know? And what do you think
Wait,
about
what
this
things in the artwork?
tracing?
Oh, okay.
Personally, I think it was just studies and reference, but just because is just because they're famous, it's a big deal.
So they're asking, well, I guess what's the question?
Uh, well, did you know that he did that or she? And then, what are your thoughts on that on the subject of
I
like
would say there's
famous
actually
artists?
some artists that I can think of that kind of get called into this same thing, where uh, even the whole thing with Dave Raposa recently on his He-Man and Masters of the Universe DVD, and uh, it's a gray subject. There's no black and white answer I can give you. I can give you my opinion on it, though. I think for a well-known artist to be drawing over, um, Crown Prince is definitely one of those where you see them produce work every day, and it's really good. But when you start to see the image that they referenced, or sometimes even looks like they just drew over it, you lose a sense of validity in their work, and it might not even be. It might be like one of those subconscious things where you like put them on a peg lower, and it's sad, but if that artist truly was just drawing over, because I feel like none of us really know besides that artist if they had the picture next to it or if they drew right on top of it. But the best way to avoid ever being put in that position where someone might put you on a peg lower than what they had you on, the standard that they had you on before, is just to never do it. Never look at a reference and purely copy 80% of it minimum, or yeah, minimum, where you can use something as a reference. Like if I want to draw my character in this Lana Del Rey pose, I really need to make sure I'm drawing my character. I am using maybe the turn of the head or the way that the light's hitting the face, but when you start to take too much from your reference, that's when you get into that gray area. So the best advice I have for you is have like 10 references open at a time when you're working at something. Because then if you take 10% from each piece, you might be inspired by like maybe the colors they used in this or the composition or whatever it might be from a bunch of different pieces. Then you're Frankensteining it together, and then it becomes kind of uniquely yours. Because I'm actually more on the side of I feel like everything's kind of been done before, and as artists today, we have the hard job of making something look as unique as possible without it being compared to something else. Because immediately, I'm sure you've done this too, where you'll look at something and you'll immediately in your head compare it to something you've already seen. And I think that's just inherent for artists nowadays. So the thing that you want to do is impress people, and sometimes it's not so much on subject matter, but it's on the way you composed it, the way you had the colors lined up in the composition, where it might evoke a certain feeling. Where it's very tough nowadays. So I would say my opinion on that is avoid it if you can, and I know I have one friend that it really, really bothers her when she can tell that it was drawn over something or it was using reference where they took most of it from. And that's why if you feel like you're trying to get away with something, then you're doing it wrong. Because you never want to be put in that position of yourself of like, I need to cheat my way to fool everyone into thinking it's my own thing. You want to try to make it as original as possible. So I guess that would be my overview on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I've been following him for a while now, and the guy actually is, or girl, I don't know if
I
it's,
think it's a girl.
it might, yeah. Um, they still have chops to draw, because they've drawn sketches like on the bus and stuff like that. Just they every once in a while you see them produce out life studies and stuff like that, and they're pretty darn good. So
Even those though, like, were they drawn on a bus or were they from images they found online? Like
that's
only that artist truly knows. I feel like you don't have to be like, what's that called when you're suspicious of everyone?
paranoid.
Yeah. When you're on that level of paranoia, I think you're focusing too much on other artists. Just focus on yourself and stay true to who you are as an artist. And if you did a study when you upload your image or whatever it might be, if you're trying to share it out, let people know this was a study. I've done a few. I feel like I've done 3 studies where I definitely just looked at someone's art and tried to recreate it and try to learn from it. And I definitely put in the description this was a study, like make it very known and apparent. 'Cause that way, you're not trying to fool people. You're just trying to show people what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna do one more nose before the stream ends.
All right. I got a really important question.
All right.
It says, "Hey Tim, it's Catherine from the I Can Draw Anything Winter class."
Hello. Hey, Catherine. How you doing?
It says, "How can I get over the fear of trying to draw unfamiliar things? Every time I try to draw something new, I kind of get scared of messing up, and I end up not trying hard enough."
I'm right there with you. Anytime I try to do an environment, I get really nervous because I've never done an environment before. To the scale that I feel like I can produce characters on, I've never been able to reproduce that in a environment sense. So just know, yes, it's scary. The best thing that you can do is embrace that fear. I don't know. Oh shoot! I wish I remember who said it, but I was listening to someone. It was a lecture, and one of the quotes they said was, "Fear will prevent." Oh, what was it? Hold on. It was something about fear will prevent you from succeeding 100% more times than failure ever will. And it was one of those things where you have to fail to succeed as a digital artist. Yeah, it sounds weird, but once you kind of embrace the idea that, yeah, I will fail, I will fall, I'll make mistakes, it becomes so much easier because then you let go of like that I need everything to be perfect or my entire art career needs to be solid from start to finish. That's not going to happen, and that's never happened for any big digital artist before ever. So I think let go of that fear and just know, yeah, there are times where you will get frustrated. I get super frustrated every time I open my red illustration and I'm like, ugh, I gotta draw rocks. I'm not that familiar with drawing rocks. And I see environment artists on YouTube or some of my friends, they're able to do this kind of foliage or this texture environment stuff that takes them like 5 to 10 minutes for a good base, and I feel like it's taking me hours, and it's frustrating. But the worst thing I could do is just give up completely. I think the best thing I can do is admit that it's a struggle and ask for advice from people without like relying on them 100%. I need to at least take some. I don't want to say. What's a good way to describe this? I can't rely on other people to do my work for me. So I have to do the research on my own. But it is good to ask your peers and other people in art that have done environment stuff before, like, give me some general tips, please, on doing an environment. And just take it slow. And yes, not only the first few times, the first like 50 times you might try to do an environment might be really frustrating. But it's like I said earlier, you just got to get those 10,000 crappy drawings out of the way so that you can start producing the good ones.
Madgy asks, "Do you consider photo bashing?" I think it's called where one takes a photo and lowers the opacity to create a texture. I've seen a lot of photo bash painters use it for intricate buildings and things as a form of cheating, or is it merely a technique to use?
See, this is a little different because usually the artists that are doing this are working at an industry level. So they need to produce works super quickly, and oftentimes that means taking shortcut routes. So I consider stuff like that a shortcut. Now, I think in the industry it makes sense because your time is limited. But when you're learning and you're trying to figure out how to do it without those shortcuts, that's when I think you're cheating yourself. But trust me, all those artists that do photo bashing and like do it professionally, they had to learn how to do it right before they could take the shortcut, kind of a thing. So it's tough where I wouldn't recommend doing it until you feel like you've got a pretty solid understanding of the material itself first.
Yeah, the class I took with Anthony Jones was on photo bashing, And so what was funny was everyone, I feel like, when they hear the word cheating, they have a preconceived notion that it means that that it's an easier route, or that like it's you cheated, right? So you won because you did something faster or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but honestly, what's funny is there's actually an art form to photo bashing. You need to understand where things need to be placed, and you can't just throw images on top of an image and be like, "Oh, I created this beautiful artwork," because it doesn't work that way. You also need to know how to paint. A huge thing that Anthony Jones talked about was the ability to, after you photobash something, you need to then recreate the material that it's made out of, and you need to know how to paint that material. If you don't know how to do that, the photobash is going to look pretty awful. And that was something that I struggled with a lot.
Hmm. Man, I love working, and once again, this isn't racist, but I love working with this color skin, where it's like this chocolate brown, where it's almost mocha in some areas. You can really work up richer colors, I feel, with like your reds and your oranges. And I guess specifically on this nose, I'm working on more of a wider set nose. And the thing that you need to focus on is the bridge. So when you're working on a wide set nose, the bridge isn't going to be quite as narrow where it looks like this, but rather the bridge becomes more like this. And since it's a little flatter, or it tends to be more flat, this shading from the middle to the edge is going to be elongated. It's not going to be as sharp. So you can have fun with the shading on the top of the nose and then keep it more sharp on the bottom here. Yeah, let's see. We'll take like, let's say 3 more questions before the stream ends.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through looking for them right now.
Okay.
Someone wants to know, or Betness says, is it possible to watch your streams where you work on Red at a later time? I don't know, do you save your videos on Twitch?
I think Twitch saved them, but I'm not sure. So it might be one of those things where if you come to it, you came to a special event, but I don't know if I'm going to take the time out to record them and then upload them. But I will say, for those of you who have been following my I know it's taken so too long. I'm almost done with it, and I'm serious this time.
Elena says, have you ever drawn the same character over and over again unconsciously? Yesterday I was sorting out my sketchbooks and I saw the same girl drawn over and over and over again with a different style and material. Creepy.
Yeah, I would say a lot. Since my faces look very similar, I can play Final Fantasy because a lot of their characters have like the same head, and it's like are wearing different hair and clothes. I definitely think I sometimes do that with my characters too, where they have a very similar base, but then you can just like edit them to a character based on what they're wearing or what their hair is.
I was going to say, I'm pretty darn sure that I've seen the Tim character in several different styles around this house.
Yes. Well, are you talking about the ones in the basement?
Yeah.
Those I didn't draw.
Oh,
Those
that's
are
right.
people have sent me fan art of it. More specifically, my friends, but still, I really do appreciate it.
That Tim character's everywhere, though.
You know what's more creepy? Actually, I think this is more creepy, is when you see your character in person. There's been at least 4 times where I've seen four different characters that I've created, where I'm like, you look exactly how I picture one of my characters, and that's that I find so bizarre and strange.
Do you say anything to that person?
I was gonna say it's even more strange to want to somehow capture their likeness, and that's when I go into all covert mode, trying to like get a picture of them. It's one of those where I'm not proud to say that, but it's so weird because then you want to be like, I love the way your facial structure looks. Where there was this one girl that looked exactly like Red, and I was like, oh my god, I need a picture somehow of you, and I wasn't able to do it, and I still kick myself to this day because there's things I could have seen on her face that when I'm trying to draw her face, I could have just used that reference image specifically to be like, oh, okay, that's how the bridge of her nose looked, and I really liked that, and I want to apply it to my character.
Was she far away or was she near you?
Far away. So it, it might have been one of those things where it may not have looked like her. I will say, my character, there's one I have called Kelly, and I swear to God, he even had long hair pulled back into a ponytail. That was like I think that's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. I was like, I want to take your picture, but I can't do that without sounding extremely uncomfortable and weird. All right, one more question, and then we'll cut the stream off.
What kind of question do you want? Do you want like a complicated one or something to do with the nose?
Should I scroll through the top voted ones? Let's see here.
Sure.
Alright, is it worth studying art at a university? Depends on you as a student and how you learn. There's more networking that can be done at an art school, but definitely you can learn anything you want on your own through the internet and the resources and tools you have available on there. My art teacher taught us that the nose is mostly shading and there is only 3 lines. I'm assuming when she says that, the 3 lines she's talking about are like the 1, 2, 3. I guess that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. I would think of it more as shapes rather than lines. Okay, let's see here. Someone's asking about the girl sitting on the wooden pole in my illustration. Hold on. So that is actually her weapon box. That's not a pole that's sticking out of the ground. So like she put it there. That wasn't like it just happened to be in this mountainside, because yeah, that would seem a little strange. But yeah, I'm seriously almost done with that, and I'm hoping to get it done soon. And I will post it when I'm done. Okay, I think. Okay, here's the last question I'll do is I'm feeling I'm not improving fast enough. Okay, if you really feel like you've hit a plateau, that happens. And I wish I knew what the source was off the top of my head, where there's a graph that like shows your progress. You know what? I'm gonna see if I can recreate this to end off the stream here, because I think a lot of artists feel this way. All right. So in this chart, this pink line represents time. And the brown represents your growth. So let's say it was like this is the skill level. And then, oh no, I'm sorry. Pink is what you would expect your graph to be. Red is time. So this is time. Okay. So you are actually the brown line here. You. And the pink is what you want you to be. So over time, your skill level is going to go up. And you would think it would just be a very progressive uphill battle like a mountain, like you're scaling a mountain. But it's actually this thing where you plateau, and then at the point, let me grab a different color here. At a point where you recognize that you've been kind of doing the same work over and over, and you feel like you should be up here because that's where you project yourself to be up to, that's when you realize you need to get better. So then you go through this whole growth, and you're testing things out, you're experimenting, and you're learning, and that's where you go above and beyond, and then you become really happy with yourself, and then you once again hit that point, you're like, okay, I'm actually above where I should be at right now. And then more time goes by, and then you're like, yeah, I'm still about where I'm at. And then once again, time will go by to a point where you feel like I haven't really grown as an artist. I've been consistent with the level of quality I've been hitting, and that's where once again you hit this growth. So right now I feel like you're just needing to hit that growth. And once you do, oh yeah, Joe just found it. Perfect. So I think Gabe was the one that showed this to me first, and this is the best representation of how you see yourself, and it's your ability. I'm trying to read this really quick. Exactly. So your art lows. This is what I was talking about, the point where you can't seem to be breaking the mold of recycling your own skill level. So you got to push yourself to go back on that uphill, and then understand that when you are plateauing, that's okay as long as you are still trying to grow as an artist. Because sometimes if you're only focused on growing, I mean, you might not be producing any work. So you still want to produce work and push yourself that way as well. So there's got to be a balance. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and that's Central Time. And outside of the States, that's -5 GMT. And next week, I think we will be covering, I'm pretty sure we'll be doing lips, and that will kind of end off our March facial feature live stream here. So I want to thank you guys again. Stay tuned we have a couple book reviews lined up, as well as I'm going to start recording the fundamental courses probably next week, but those might not be out for a bit, so don't expect those anytime soon. But just know that they're on their way. And then lastly, we have an exercise going on right now that's due on Friday. It's on master studies, and Joe and myself are almost done with ours, so hopefully you've been working on yours, or if you really want to try to get started quickly, they're on the website under exercise, I think it's 37. So check those out, and I think that's all. Joe, do you have any?
I was going to say the ones that the people have already submitted are freaking awesome, and I hope people just didn't trace or anything. I hope they actually learned from that doing the studies, you know.
Actually, I haven't even told you this, Joe, but next week's exercise, what it's going to probably be is exercise 38, and it's going to be pretty much applying the master study to an original work.
Yeah.
Miles Johnson did a really great representation of this, where he took this old woman photo and then he applied it to an original character of this younger girl, but you can see how he was influenced from this old woman picture, and he was able to apply it to his own work. So that's what these studies are meant to do. You're not only supposed to just do the studies, but you're also supposed to apply what you learned. So hopefully you'll acquire knowledge doing these master studies, and then you'll apply it in your own work. So I think that's all the big news we got. And I think we'll probably be doing a spring contest soon, probably in April. So if you have been looking forward to a new contest from Concept Cookie, we'll be doing it in April. And I think that's it. Okay, thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We'll see you next Wednesday, and that's it.
All right. See you
Bye.
guys.